Welcome to Hot Reads, our weekly look at the NFL with Hall of Fame quarterback Troy Aikman. I'm Tom Vandervoort, and Troy, this week I've got a little theme that we're going to explore. Jekyll and Hyde is what I'm calling it. Teams that are up, teams that are down. And I want to start with the game that you're calling. It's up in New England, the Patriots hosting the Giants. And I want to start with the Patriots because the Jekyll and Hyde aspect of that team is maybe the offense versus the defense. And on the defensive side of the ball, this is a team last in the league in total yards given up, over 400 yards a game. They're giving up over 20 points a game. They're not very good on third down. Quite a few penalties on the defensive side of the ball. Is this a defense that's good enough to get the Patriots to the Super Bowl and win it?
Well, I think the way that they've played through the early part of the season, you'd probably have to say no. But I think, one, if you look back to last year, this was a defense that struggled last year as well, and yet the team went 14-2. And clearly they didn't do much damage when they got into the playoffs, got knocked out right away. But New England historically, especially on the defensive side of the ball, is going to improve as the season progresses. I mean, they've got some holes, they've had some injuries, defensive backs. Basically by their own admission, I mean, they've released a number of players. They're pretty thin on the back end. They showed some progress after some pretty tough games through the first 3 or 4 weeks. They showed some progress against the New York Jets, and then certainly the home win against the Cowboys. And then last week, Pittsburgh comes out and is able to exploit them throwing the football. I would expect the Giants to try to do the same. But Bill Belichick, normally this is going to be a defense that gets better as the season goes along. So I wouldn't discount them and say that they're not good enough just because of what we've seen from this team over the years.
Gotcha. Now let's look at the Giants, because to me they play in the NFL's ultimate Jekyll and Hyde division. They've had a good season overall at 5-2. Their losses, though, to the Redskins and the Seahawks. Now the Eagles started slow, seem to have found their wings. Obviously the Cowboys up and down. The Redskins seem like they're on their way to irrelevancy. Who do you like in the NFC East? Can the Giants be a factor?
Well, the Giants definitely can be a factor. I mean, they're a factor right now. The fact that they beat Philadelphia, the loss to Washington, obviously not great, but as you said, I mean, Washington, they're not going to be in the race when this is all said and done. And I still think it's a division that's up for grabs amongst those 3 teams. I still think the Cowboys are a good team. Certainly didn't show it last Sunday night against Philadelphia. Philadelphia is certainly starting to find themselves. The Giants, I think if you were handicapping it right now, you'd probably, go with the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Giants, even though they've played well, you talk about the Seattle loss that they had. We called that game at home, and that's the type of game. They almost had it happen to them Sunday against the Dolphins. That's the game or games that they have struggled with when they've played at home or on the road against teams that going in you say this team should clearly win this game, and yet they lost to Seattle, almost lost to the Dolphins. You look at their next 6 games, I don't think it'll happen, but they very easily could lose their next 6 games. They're just now getting into the meat of their schedule, so a lot can happen with that team. I like Philadelphia. I still like Dallas. Some will say it's because I played for the Cowboys, but that's not true. They didn't look good Sunday night, but I think that, there are those games, just like what happened with the Saints against the Rams on Sunday. There are those games that, for whatever reasons, they just don't work very well. And I think that's going to be the case. Dallas has a little bit easier schedule coming up here over the next 3 to 4 games, especially when you compare that with what the Giants are dealing with.
Okay, now let's look out west, because we don't want to give the West Coast short shrift and talk about the San Diego Chargers. A disappointing loss, obviously, the way they dropped that game to the Kansas City Chiefs. And this team is maybe the ultimate Jekyll and Hyde team. I mean, last year somehow they found a way to lead the league in total offense and total defense and not be one of the 12 teams in the playoffs. A lot of that comes back to the head coach, at least in the minds of fans. I know you played for Norv Turner. He was your offensive coordinator with the Cowboys for many years. What can you tell us about Norv, both as a coordinator, and what's your view of him as a head coach?
Yeah, I can speak from personal experience with Norv as an offensive coordinator. He was my coordinator, as you said, for 3 years, 2 of which we were able to win the Super Bowl. And I don't think there's a better offensive mind in the game. And he's had success offensively everywhere that he's been. He's developed quarterbacks, not only quarterbacks, which he's known for, but probably more with running backs. He believes strongly in the running game. He's had good runners everywhere that he's been. But the Chargers, a little bit like the Giants, as I was just saying, this is a team that seems to lose some of those games that they just shouldn't lose. And you know, Kansas City, that's a hard place to go play there at Arrowhead Stadium, and they've got great fans. It gets loud. You know, talking about a Monday night primetime game, and you know, things started off so badly for the Chargers there in that first half, but yet they were able to come back. I've never seen an ending to the game like that with a fumbled snap when you're just trying to position the ball to kick the winning field goal. And you know, Norv, being a friend of mine, hated to see that happen for him, but they've dug themselves a big hole. And whether it's in San Diego or Dallas or Chicago or any other NFL city, when the team is not meeting the expectations, then the coach is the first guy in the firing line.
Can you talk to the difference between being a good coordinator and being a head coach? It's something that fans talk about a lot. Well, this guy might be a good coordinator, but maybe not a good head coach. What do you see as the difference or the qualities that you need to be a good head coach in the league that maybe you don't need as a coordinator?
Well, I've always believed as a head coach that if I were in a position of hiring a head coach, that I'd want someone who could stand in front of 53 hostile guys in a locker room and command the room and get everybody's attention, because at some point, no matter how good of a year you're having, you're going to hit those lulls to where you need somebody who can really stand up and make sure everyone is on board with the way things are being done. That's in a good year. When things are going poorly, you know, you're dealing with that each and every week. And so I think that when you look over the history of the game and the coaches that we regard as being really great coaches, they're pretty tough, stubborn individuals, and I think that that's important in the game of football. As offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, you're not the guy who then is directing the entire team, and the requirements are obviously much different. There are those that are able to go on from being a coordinator and then being a successful head coach. Virtually every head coach at some point or another has been a coordinator, but it doesn't necessarily mean just because you're good on one side of the ball in terms of putting that together that you're going to then be effective in front of the whole team and handle the crises as they occur, because essentially that's what being a head coach is crisis management.
Very good. All right, man. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for your time this week. We'll definitely catch up with you next week then.
Okay, Tom. Thanks, buddy.